Welcome to Knicks Home Court with your host. My name is Greg Armstrong. This is episode number 87. And folks, it's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without a strong pod to step to. My apologies, folks. My sincere apologies. I've been really busy. I haven't had the time to sit down with the mic and make a quality podcast. That's why my last few podcasts has been on the phone, because I'm always on the road, always on the go. But I'm gonna take this little bit of time I have here to talk about Frank Ntilikina, because a lot of games went by and I had some thoughts on Frank Ntilikina. And the Knicks beat Brooklyn yesterday. Very good game from Frank Ntilikina. 10 points, 10 assists, 7 rebounds. But I want to go back a little bit. I want to talk about Frank Ntilikina against Dallas. He didn't really go head-to-head per se against Dennis Smith. It really wasn't head-to-head. But there's a couple of things I want you to notice. One, everybody likes Dennis Smith. A lot of Knicks fans wish the Knicks had Dennis Smith. And what that tells me, that you're not really interested in winning, but you're interested in what looks good, what makes you excited. A guy who can dunk in a layup line, a guy who has explosiveness, you know what I mean? Great to watch player. But those players, man, you need a ball mover. You need a player that makes everybody better and does the little things to help the team win. And the reason why I mention that is because I can't recall Frank Ntilikina's stat line at this moment. However, I know it was something like 7 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, something like that, 2 steals. That's his usual stat line. And like I said early on, when Frank Ntilikina got drafted by the Knicks, he is a winning player. He makes winning plays. Going back to the Dallas game, guess who was playing the entire fourth quarter? Or at least most of the fourth quarter? Frank Ntilikina. Guess who wasn't in the game in the fourth quarter? Dennis Smith was not in the game in the fourth quarter. Because when it's time to win games, that flash, that old dunking and all that shit. Remember, dunking is nice, but it's 2 points. You don't get 3 points for dunking, so, and basically, the team that won the game also kept their rookie in the game. Think about that for a second. So, when it comes to, sometimes, all right, it's like this. Sometimes you have a player who's really good, and then you have a player who's really good for a particular team. And I think that Dennis Smith is really good, and I think Frank Ntilikina is really good for this particular team. And think about it this way. We already know he's going to be an elite defender if he's not already. I mean, every time he faces an elite player, an elite offensive player, they always say, man, he's long, he's pretty tough on D. We've seen it. They don't want to get ripped by a rookie. They're extra careful when they're playing against Frank. Frank is fucking them up. But those long arms are starting to come into play on rebounds and drives and floaters. That's what I see for him in the future. I see triple-double. I see a guy that can basically average, depends on how much he decides to start shooting, but I think he can average like a 15, 9 and like 6. 15 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds per game. I don't think that's out of the reach of him. I think he can actually do better than that. Because remember, what he did last night was in 29 minutes. He didn't play 35 minutes, 40 minutes. He played 29 minutes, had 10 rebounds, 10 assists, and 7 rebounds. Winning plays, folks. Stat filler. Like I said, a fucking miniature version of Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard was that defensive stopper, and he developed his offensive game. And that's what's really, really important. Being able to, there's not many point guards that can lock down their position. There's not many. There's not many Gary Paytons in the league. Jason Kidd's, great defenders. Damian Lillard is a terrible defender. Russell Westbrook is a terrible defender. We know Lonzo Ball is a terrible defender. I mean, he's not a star. Kyrie's never killed anybody with his defense. Yeah, keep going. Name everybody I've named. Frank is already better than them defensively. He's already better than those players I named defensively. Steph Curry, he's better than Steph Curry now defensively. Think about that. People always talk about defense wins games. Well, I'm going to tell you what else wins games. There's a part of defense is disrupting another team's offensive flow by chopping off the head of the snake, which Frank has the ability to do. Fucks up the whole team's offense. That doesn't show in the stat line. That's why I told people this is the thing with Frank Ntilikina, right? When you're drafting a pick, you're drafting for all-time great players. You should never draft particularly just for need. You draft with the hope that you can draft an all-time great player. That's why you take a Porzingis who's a 7'3" small forward, basically. You take him over everybody. Because if he is what we think he is, he might even be better than what we think he is. Remember, folks, Kristaps is only 22. You draft a guy like Frank Ntilikina, who is he's more raw than the other guys, but he has one thing that most point guards sometimes never have, is defense. His principles of the basketball game is elite. That's another thing nobody talks about. I think that he still needs to learn when to pass and learn, and he's learning that the more aggressive he is, the more open other players are. Because when Frank Ntilikina is aggressive, the defenses don't know what to do because that's not how he normally plays. When he starts to play that way, then they're going to have to adjust, and either way, players are going to be open. Now I want to move on to Kristaps real quick. Kristaps had a great game yesterday. A great game, not because he shot well, but because the way he was used and the way his shots came in the flow of the offense. I've been saying this forever. I like the elbow post-ups, and I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to develop that part of his game because when he gets in a switch, he should be able to dominate from that location. However, when you put Kristaps at the center position, now you have to play, it's a completely different game. It's pick and pop, pick and roll, run him off screens. Most centers can't keep up with Kristaps if he's running off screens. And I mean, I don't know who wants to screen a center, but either way, you don't really have to do much. Just take him off his path, just bump him slightly. You know, I mean, basically, you can turn Kristaps into a 7'3" Reggie Miller for part of the game, running him off screens, drop downs, and all these different kind of plays to free him up for shots. Basically the same thing the Chicago Bulls were doing with Lauri Markkanen. And that's what I thought they were going to do with Kristaps. See, Kristaps is far better than Lauri Markkanen because he can do it. He can put the ball on the ground and he can do a lot more things, but I think a large portion of his shots needs to come out of movement, out of ball movement, player movement, picks, pops, things like that make the game easy for him, where he could just move around the court. You can't find him. Where's he at? Oh, he's popping for a three. And then there's going to be times when the game slows down where you need to throw it in the post and he has a mismatch. But see, if Kristaps is playing center, he's not shooting over those guys. He's faking and going to the rim. He's trying to dribble and get by them. He's not posting up big guys. He's not doing that. So if he's playing center, you know what you have to do. You have to do pick and pop. You have to post. You have to do a lot of pick and pop and a lot of pick and roll and a lot of slips. But I really believe that Kristaps also will get better as he gains weight and as he gets stronger, where he can set better screens. I think that's part of the reason why he doesn't set great screens, because each time he sets a screen, you have a grown man running into his stomach. And I think that's probably a little bruising going on. I think that hurts. Like Kyle O'Quinn can set a pick all day. He can set picks all day long. Somebody like Kristaps setting picks, it's gonna hurt a little bit on Kristaps. It's gonna hurt Kristaps a little bit. So that's just something to consider. And that's probably why he does a lot of slipping. He's like, fuck that shit. You ain't see my ribs after a game. You know, so that's just something to think about, you know. Because I know if I was playing basketball and guys were setting screens on me, I'm going to take a foul eventually. I'm going to run through one of those screens, and I'm going to make sure that my elbow knocks the shit out your balls. Yes, I'm going to do that. Why? Because it's still a foul, but I'm going to let you know that if I run through a screen, it's going to hurt you. Just like Charles Barkley. Why do you think a lot of people didn't take charges from Charles Barkley? Because Charles Barkley, this is a play of it, where Charles Barkley, a guy was taking a charge, and Charles Barkley was like, fuck this, I'm going to get a foul this time, but I'm going to run through this motherfucker like Jerome Bettis. And that's exactly what he did. And players are like, shit, I ain't taking no charge with that fucking raging bull coming down. And what happens is, if you don't stand there and take the punishment of a charge, it's going to be called a block. Anyway, I hate the charge call. I think it's a stupid call. I think it's a stupid play in the NBA. I think the whole charge is not a defensive play. It's called, to me, it's an obstruction play. I'm going to stand in your way, and if you run into me, that's a foul. That, to me, is not the spirit of a charging call. The charging is supposed to be if you're guarding somebody and they're literally running over you. Not they have a fast break or they have an opening and you run to a spot and stand there. I'm an obstacle. Don't hit me. That shit needs to be outlawed. It ruins the game. It kills the flow. It stops the dunks that you would normally see. Because why? Because guys are standing under the rim, and it's dangerous for players to get up in the air and the guy's standing there. Oh, you ran into me. It's a foul. That's stupid fucking shit. They need to take that charge out of there. Or only call charges when you're guarding the man and he's literally running over you, not running to a spot. Anyway, that's my rant for the day. So, you know, I'm very happy with the Knicks victory, and I don't want y'all to think I didn't do a podcast because they was losing. You know, I wasn't fed up. Like I said, I'm not fed up with losses, wins and losses. I'm more fed up with how they play, because how they play can determine where this team is going next year and the year after. You know, winning games, I know this sounds crazy, but winning games, playing a bunch of individual basketball and not playing like a team and not playing together, and winning games like that is not sustainable. It makes a team think it's good when it's not good. So I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of winning like that. You know, I'm a fan of winning with a sustainable system and a sustainable way of playing, basically a mentality. Just basically a mentality. Anything you do, you should have a mentality about it, a system, how you do things, whatever you do. And that proves to be successful. That's why every single successful company and business and corporation on this planet has systems, as well as teams have systems. Football teams have offensive systems. Basketball teams have offensive systems and defensive systems. If you're winning haphazardly, there's teams that used to win haphazardly, like just basically just on sheer skill. And that was the Oklahoma City Thunder when they had Kevin Durant. It was like, you can't stop Kevin Durant. Oh, you think you can stop him? You can't stop Russell Westbrook then. And then that's how they would do it. And that's not really, even though they almost won a championship that way, because they are two Hall of Famers, first ballot. When you have those kind of dynamic players, you can kind of do it. Kyrie Irving and LeBron James did it. But see, when they lost last year, that was hurting them. You go, I go, you go, I go, because Golden State had much more firepower at that time. What they needed, which Cleveland needed, was more firepower to play that way. To play that style, a bunch of individual basketball, you need at least 3 or 2 super elite basketball players. You need guys that literally can take over a game. You need like 2 or 3 of those guys. And most teams don't have that. And even Golden State has that, and they still play a system game. That means that when you play a system game, you bring players in, you can plug and play. You can bring another guy in, and as long as he knows the system, he's going to get open shots and he's going to do well. So anyway, I just always want to talk about that. And this is something that Phil Jackson has always said. He loves system basketball. Everybody mentioned triangle. Yeah, that's the system he loves, but he loves system basketball as well as I do. So, excuse me. You ever feel like you're gonna burp and then you just like, it's just air in your throat and you're like, well, I don't want to choke. Anyway, so that's it in a nutshell, folks. That's it. You know, I mean, and I promise I will definitely put up more podcasts. Like I said, I didn't want to put up a podcast and just say a couple of words and be done. As you can see, I'm driving, I'm on the move. I'm always on the move. So I didn't want to do that, you know. Just want to give you quality, you know, every time. I'm sorry about the noise in the background and things like that. I will return to be giving regular podcasts and stuff like that. Clearer sounding podcasts, maybe a little music in the beginning. Just really fix it up, clean it up. I appreciate, you know, all the commenters and everybody who listens to the podcast. I saw the comments asking where am I and things like that. That makes a brother happy, you know. But I'm back. So I'll be doing these podcasts regularly again. Like I said, I was going through some personal life changes. That's over. Now it's time to buckle down and get into these Knicks. And again, folks, this team is a playoff team. This team is trying to make the playoffs. Yeah, they're losing games. And if you look at all the teams that are struggling to make the playoffs, that are fighting, they all have gone through this tailspin. Detroit was the second best team in the league after 20 games. Then they lost like 7 out of the last 10 and shit like that. You know, Orlando was at the top of the division and they lost and they out of the playoff picture. You know, every team goes through. Cleveland's going through losing now. Every team goes through that. It's you know, it's just your great players are the ones who's supposed to put a stop to that. Every now and then, okay, we need the great players to be great and stop this losing streak. And that's what it comes down to. Because when a team is losing a lot of games consecutively, the thing you need to stop the losing is your great player now has to be a great player. Has to be one of those games where your great player steps up and just says, I'm going to lead us to victory today. It may not make us win the next 5, but we're going to win this one today. And Melo used to do it, and all great players do that. And Kristaps just did that, basically. So, you know, I mean, oh, also, I wanted to get to, because like I said, I missed a few podcasts. I wish I could have done the other ones because I had other things to talk about, like Tim Hardaway Jr. Like Tim Hardaway Jr. I want to talk about Tim Hardaway Jr. You notice when he was on the court, his first day back, the first thing I noticed, pop quiz, folks, the first thing you noticed, what was the first thing you noticed about the Knicks when Tim Hardaway came back? First thing I noticed was the team looks completely different. The team actually looks like they can score. Like we have another person that's constantly going and trying to get his. It makes the team, the overall team, look different. It does. The team looks different with him on the court. Obviously, because he's a good player. Even though if you ask Tim Hardaway Jr., he's an all-star. You know, there was a Trey Burke sighting. I was surprised as Trey Burke actually got some playing time so early. I thought he would be sitting for like 5 games, but maybe he got a practice in or something like that. Trey Burke looked good. I'm going to tell you right now what Trey Burke is. Possibly. Trey Burke possibly may be Jarrett Jack's replacement. But it seems like it's lit a fire underneath Frank Ntilikina as well. But he's probably Jarrett Jack's replacement. Not this season. Next season. You can get a young guy who basically can be a 6th man and really play well. If he can play well, I mean, it stabilizes your team. You need units. You need units that you can bring in and they can change the speed or the tempo or the rhythm of the game. You know, like I said, when I think of basketball, I think of music. Always think of music. And when the music is out of system and out of whack, it sounds like bullshit. But when the music is in unison and everything is going right, something like an orchestra or a symphony, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to listen to. Just like basketball, it's beautiful to watch when they're going in when everybody's in a rhythm. And you need your second unit. And that's the funny thing about, people never talk about this about great teams. Great teams usually have a second unit that's also been together for a long time. Literally a second team. Golden State is really the best at this. With Iguodala coming off the bench, Sean Livingston, I can't even think of nobody else. But, you know, the guys they used to bring off the bench were like pit bulls. They come in there, everybody knows their role, everybody knows, you know. That's why when a player gets hurt, a lot of times you get these coaches don't want to, they'll put a random guy in to start because they don't want to fuck up that rotation chemistry. It's really important. It really is. But going forward, I mean, I'm excited as a Knicks fan. I see positive things. I see Ntilikina looks like a slow burn. You know, a guy that gets better with time. And hopefully he just never goes back. Once he gets confidence in something, he's starting to get confidence in driving to the hoop. He's showing a little flair. You know, I know he has some confidence in him. I know he has some nastiness to him. You know, showing how he stood up to LeBron. Let me tell you something, man. I've been around, man. You can't fool me. You can't fool me. You know, all that neophyte, I'm young 19, looking innocent on his face. You know, if you having that innocent, like, what am I doing look on his face? He had that same face when he tried to dunk the ball last night. Same little face. It's disarming. Trust me, it's disarming. And he's gonna, and Kristaps does the same thing. He does a grimace, and you know, he puts on this little, like, you know, I'm just playing basketball. Because you know why? That keeps the other players kind of little subdued. Some people talk shit to get their game going, and some people basically are quiet and want to kill you quietly. Joe Dumars is one of those guys. Hey, how you doing? Okay. You know, I'm a nice guy. I'm going to bust your ass for 35 tonight, but I'm a nice guy. Jordan was the other way around. Jordan was the polar opposite. He would tell you, I'm going to score 50 tonight. I'm going to bust your ass. Every time on a free throw line, Jordan was talking shit because his whole thing was hyping himself up. He feel like Jordan was the type that, you know, I got to live up to what I say. Fuck everybody else. Same thing with Kobe. Same thing with Larry Bird. He was a great shit talker. But then you have those people, like say a Magic Johnson, another guy who I think that Ntilikina is in that line of, I'm not going to talk shit. I'm going to just smile. I'm going to be a young kid. I'm just happy to play in basketball. But truth be told, deep down inside, I want to bust your ass. Deep down inside, I'm going to bust your ass. That's what it really comes down to. And I'm starting to see that in Frank. And the more confidence he gets. I'm telling people kept saying he's not fast. Frank is not quick. There's a difference between quick and fast. Quick is usually reserved for the little guys. In space, they can make little moves. Like Chris Paul is not fast at all, but he's quick. In the half court, he's probably the quickest player in the half court. Getting from A to B quickly. Quick twitch. That's quickness. Fast and speed is like the Greek freak. It's not quick in short space. But You give him the whole court, and he's the fastest guy out there. He's a gazelle. And I think that that's how Frank is. That's why I love... One thing that is going to be pretty to see for years to come as a Knicks fan, one thing that's going to be really pretty to see is Frank Ntilikina getting the rebound and going coast to coast. You will see a lot of that. With those strides, Frank needs to be in open court. You can see it. He can do pick and rolls and all that stuff, but he needs to be in the open court. And once he develops that skill, he's going to be a coast to coast player. There's no other way, because that's the only way he can really get out there and stride. That's when you get to see how fast he really is. In the end. Not in the half court as much. But I wanted to also mention, I noticed they were putting Frank Ntilikina and Kristaps in a lot of pick and roll situations. Because the way he hits up Kyle O'Quinn, he can do the same thing with Kristaps. Kristaps wants to play the pick and pop game. Because when Trey Burke did that shit with him, he was already looking at Trey Burke like, high five, this is what the fuck I'm talking about. And Frank Ntilikina can do the same thing. But you see, with a guard that's a threat, to be an effective point guard in the NBA, you have to be a threat. Even if you're a fake threat, you have to be a threat. You have to make the defense react to you. If you're not going to make the defense react to you, they're going to steal the ball when you pass. Excuse me. They're going to know what you're doing. And Frank Ntilikina has finally starting to figure that out. Damn. I don't know what's going on with me this morning. Sorry. So, you know, Frank Ntilikina is definitely starting to do the things that I thought he would do. Because it's physics, folks. It's nothing special. It's physics. It's just physics. He's 6'5", 7-foot wingspan. As much as that helps him on defense, it helps him just as much on offense. How he can block shots, he can shoot over guys. How he can catch back, he can be, like you could pick him off on a pick. He can get back to his man because he's long. He also can get by his man because he's long, or shoot over his man. And I think the time will come. That's why everybody get caught up in him being faster than this guy. But again, what made Magic Johnson so great? He was 6'8", 215 pounds. So he didn't need speed. What happened with Magic was he just would shoot over the smaller guards. And then if you put somebody 6'8" on him, usually a small forward, he was a little quicker than that small forward. And that's going to happen with Frank Ntilikina. You're going to have to put shooting guards and small forwards on him eventually. And that's going to disrupt the entire team. That's going to disrupt the other team's defense. So you see the development. I love what Hornacek is doing, showing confidence in the fourth quarter. This is great development, folks. Fuck anything else you said. What was Hornacek's job this year? Yeah, try to make the playoffs, but more than anything, develop your young core. And guess what he's doing? He's developing Kristaps, still developing Kristaps, turning Kristaps into that franchise player. Yes, Kristaps has to do it, but the coach also has to put him in position to become that franchise player. Which means when you're a franchise player, that means you have to be unstoppable on all nights. There's no nights off for the best player on the team. There's no nights off. That's why the franchise gets what he wants. That's why. And I must say, I think that Hornacek is doing a great job developing Kristaps as well. And not only that, I think that, how can I put it? I think Hornacek is also growing into a great coach. I think he's growing into a really good coach, folks. Yes, he is. Because, yes, he did have one style of play. Up and down, pick and roll, three-point shooting. But he's literally coaching up these guys. He's coaching up these guys. The same thing he's doing with Ntilikina. He's coaching them up. And he's being allowed to coach in a coach's sense. And I'm very, very happy about that development. Very, very happy. You know, gotta say it. Because these things pay dividends 3-4 years from now. That's why the truth is that it's a travesty that Mark Jackson does not get credit for the early development and principles he put into Klay Thompson and Steph Curry in that early Golden State team. Just wanted to say that. And on another note, I wanted to mention something about college ball real quick, as I keep my eye on the college scoreboard. That's why, like, win or lose, I'm not doing a podcast because the Knicks are not losing a game or winning a game. It has nothing to do with it, because even if they lose, like I said, if they lose 15 straight games, then I'm going to be doing podcasts about the college players coming out. So either way, whatever happens is going to be a win-win. Now, you don't want to lose 15 games in a row. That's not a win-win. You know, I mean, maybe for a draft pick, but you want to see these guys fighting to the very end. That's the best case scenario. Fighting to the very end, making the playoffs or barely missing the playoffs, and getting a nice pick in return, and basically having. I remember one year, the year that Chicago got the number 1 pick and drafted Derrick Rose, they were trying to make the playoffs. They were barely out of the A seed. They didn't make the playoffs, and they still got lucky and got the number 1 pick. I'm not saying we're going to do that. I'm just saying, you know, you try to win the games. So anyway, the thing I wanted to say about college ball is I think that something I've been looking at, right? A lot of players who are one and done, a lot of times by 31, 32, like I hear people start to say that that's old. And I remember when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar played, I was very young, but I do still remember, and I can look back and look at the numbers. He played until 40. The great players back in the yesteryear played to about 35, 36. They were still elite at 33, like LeBron, who takes great care of his body. They still were elite at in their mid-30s. Larry Bird at 33 still was killing them, but his back started fucking up. But a lot of players, these one-and-done players, a lot of one-and-done players are out of the league at 32, 33, like they're old players. Like they're old. They're not old. But the thing is that nobody's taking into account. The one thing that people are not taking into account, that needs to be taken into account, is in college you play 20 to 30 games. Maybe 35, maybe 40 games. Let's just say 40. Let's just be like, if a team goes far, let's say they play 40 games. You play that 40 games for 3 years as your body is developing. And when I say developing, I mean from 18 to like 22, 21, you're developing your adulthood body. You know, it's not just about getting tall. You're growing out. You're getting stronger. You know? So, Tim Duncan stayed 3 years and played 20 years in the league. Right? Tim Duncan, Jordan played 3 years, and well, he didn't play 20 years, but he also stepped out the league. But he played late. A lot of great players. Now, people are going to talk about the anomaly, the exceptions. For some reason, I can't say that word. Anomaly. I don't know why. It's just stuck. It's just not going right. So the thing is, they're talking about, all right, the Kobe's and the the Kobe's and the Garnetts, the truly special players. They're probably going to take better care of their bodies. They're already elite. It's different. But I'm talking about the average one-and-done player. I think that the NCAA, the NCAA, should pay them. I think they should pay them at least $50,000 a player, or a percentage up to $50,000. In other words, if it's a team like Duke, they can play even the 12th man. Everybody gets $50,000. No arguing. Everybody gets $50,000. Or you let them make money if their likeliness, but you don't want to do that because then players may play a certain way. Everybody gets $50,000. And then if they say, what about the lower level, Division III leagues or the lower level teams? Like I said, a percentage of what they make off the team, out of that percentage is how you develop a salary. So if a team is only making $100,000, you're not paying each player $50,000. You might be paying them $5,000, whatever, but you're fucking paying them. So they're not starving. And they can stay. This is really for the better players. They can stay in the league, and they can come into the league as grown men, ready for 82 games. A lot of these players, they're winded after 40 games, 50 games. That's why they're getting injuries. A lot of young players, you've thought about it, recent years, a lot of rookies are getting hurt in their first 2 years, injuries that can have big effects all through their career. Because their body structurally is not ready for the pounding of the NBA. 82 games. In college football, they get this. They get this. You're not going pro after 1 year. No matter how big you think you are, you're not a man. You're not ready for that pounding of the NFL. And you know what? They're not ready for the pounding of the NBA. But they must be paid, because you know what? Players are going to always leave, because I'm going to leave if I could be one and done. Even if I know I'm not a great NBA player, I'll never be great. Even if I'm going to spend 1 year in the league, shit, my first year, my first contract, I'm making a few $1 million. So anyway, I just had that in my mind. I wanted to share that with the Knicks home court crowd and things like that. And I wanted to give you a nice, decent length of a podcast. Knicks won. Let's keep it going. We trying to become a playoff team. We trying to get that grit and that determination. And it was good to see the Knicks just crush the Nets. You know, people want to keep giving the Nets credit and Nets props. And look, I want to see D'Angelo Russell do good. I want to see Okafor do good. I'm looking forward to that. But the Knicks hate has made the Nets people disillusioned. Anyway, that's all I got for this episode right now. This has been Knicks episode number 87. I'm your host. My name is Greg Armstrong. And I'll speak to y'all later. Peace.